Have you ever wondered if our own civilization, with all its power and technology, could just disappear? Imagine a city like New York or London, bustling and alive, one day becoming silent ruins. It sounds like science fiction, right? But it's not. It happened to the most powerful empire the world had ever seen. It happened to Rome. For 1,000 years, Rome was the center of the world. Its legions were undefeated, its engineering was legendary, and its culture shaped the future. From the cold lands of Britain to the deserts of Mesopotamia, all roads led to Rome. It felt eternal, invincible. People born as Roman citizens couldn't imagine a world without the empire. And then it fell. But how? How does something so vast, so powerful, simply crumble? Most people will tell you it was because of barbarian invasions. They'll paint a picture of savage hordes storming the gates, bringing the mighty empire to its knees. And yes, that was part of it. The Goths, the Vandals, the Huns, they were the final hammer blows. But a healthy, strong structure doesn't collapse from a few hits. The truth is, Rome was already sick from the inside, long before the first barbarian crossed the Rhine. The real story of Rome's fall is far more subtle and far more terrifying, because it's a story that has repeated itself throughout history, and it might be happening again, right now. Let's rewind. Long before the final collapse in 476 AD, the seeds of decay were planted. It started with something surprisingly simple: economic instability. The empire had grown too large, and its wars of expansion, once a source of wealth and slaves, became a massive drain on its resources. To pay for its enormous army and sprawling government, emperors started debasing the currency. They would mix cheaper metals like copper into their silver coins. A coin that was once pure silver was now only 5% silver. People weren't stupid. They knew their money was worth less, so prices for everything skyrocketed. This runaway inflation crippled the middle class and the poor. Sound familiar? At the same time, the political landscape became a circus of chaos. The 3rd century saw a period known as the crisis of the 3rd century. In just 50 years, Rome had over 20 different emperors, and most of them were assassinated. The position of emperor became a death sentence. With no stable leadership, civil wars became constant. Generals would march their armies on Rome itself, not to defend it, but to seize power. The very legions meant to protect the empire were tearing it apart from within. Trust in the government, in the system itself, evaporated. And as the rich got richer, hiding away in their fortified country villas, the poor were left to fend for themselves. The gap between the haves and the have-nots grew into a chasm. The social fabric that held the empire together began to unravel. People lost their sense of shared identity, their Romanness. Why fight for an empire that seemed to care so little for them? They were more concerned with their local community, their own survival, than with the grand idea of Rome. This decay wasn't dramatic. It was a slow, creeping rot. It was the farmer who couldn't afford to plant his crops, the soldier who hadn't been paid in months, the citizen who no longer believed in the laws. Now, here's where the story takes a fascinating twist. We often think of history as a series of unique events. But what if it's a pattern? What if civilizations are like living organisms? They are born, they grow, they reach a peak, and then they begin to decline and eventually die. This idea is called the cyclical theory of history. Thinkers from the ancient Greek historian Polybius to the modern scholar Oswald Spengler have observed this terrifyingly consistent pattern. Every great civilization seems to follow this arc. It starts with a period of struggle and unity, forging a strong, cohesive society. Then comes a golden age of expansion, wealth, and cultural achievement. But this success brings complexity. The economy becomes overstretched. The government becomes a bloated bureaucracy. Political infighting becomes the norm. And most importantly, the people lose their sense of collective purpose. They become individualistic, decadent, and lose faith in the very institutions that made them great. Look at the Spanish Empire, built on gold from the New World, which collapsed under inflation and endless wars. Or the British Empire, on which the sun never set, which crumbled as it overextended itself and lost its economic dominance. In every case, the external threats, the barbarians, were merely the final agents of a collapse that had been prepared for centuries by internal decay. The barbarians didn't destroy Rome. They were simply the ones who showed up to tip over a structure that was already hollow. So what does this mean for us? We live in an age of unprecedented technological progress and global interconnectedness. We feel invincible, just like the Romans did. But look around. Are we seeing similar patterns? Extreme political polarization where compromise is seen as weakness? Economic inequality reaching levels not seen in a century? A loss of faith in our institutions, from government to the media? A culture that sometimes seems more focused on individual gratification than on collective good? The story of Rome's fall isn't just a history lesson. It's a mirror, and it forces us to ask some deeply uncomfortable questions. Is our civilization currently in its golden age, or are we in our late autumn, with the signs of winter all around us? The Roman citizen in 410 AD, watching the Visigoths sack his eternal city, probably didn't see the big picture. He didn't see the centuries of economic decay and political rot. He just saw chaos. He just saw the end of his world. The most important lesson from Rome is this: collapse is not an event, it's a process. It's a slow erosion of trust, of unity, and of shared values. And it happens so slowly that by the time you realize you're falling, you're already on the ground. The Romans couldn't imagine a world without Rome. Can we imagine a world without ours? Maybe the question isn't whether our civilization will fall, but what we will do to ensure that if it does, the values we hold dear, knowledge, compassion, and progress, survive the fall. What will we build from the ruins? Thanks for watching. If this made you think, consider subscribing for more journeys into the questions that shape our world.